People are dropping in. Everyone who's here already, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to hold out until 1 minute past. Just let people roll in. I can see people joining, and then we will kick off. Just that deadly silence, Dan and Dev, before we start.
Yeah.
Eerie. Uncomfortable.
Afternoon, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
At 26. Hi, Keenan. Okay, we've hit 1 minute past. Let's kick off. So first and foremost, thank you everyone for joining us and taking the time at 1 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. I'm in particular looking forward to this webinar with Dan and Dave. I think it's a really interesting opportunity in this really exciting and fast moving industry. So just to give you a bit of a format of the session, we'll spend the first 5 minutes just doing quick intros. I'll give you a bit of data around the data center space. We'll let Dan and Dave introduce themselves. We'll then spend circa 20 minutes just asking some questions, both to Dan and Dave. They both got, you'll learn they both got different, similar backgrounds actually in the military, but different careers within this space. So it's going to be good to hear their perspective. We'll then throw it to the floor. I think Annabelle might be popping up a Slido at some point, or if you want to ask some questions in the chat, you can ask some questions in the chat. But the next portion will be a bit of a Q&A from the floor, and then we'll wrap up with a bit of an overview, and then we'll share some interesting opportunities as well with Dan Cole at Digital Realty at the end of the session. So let me hit you with some data. I think there's no question this is a bit of a historic boom right now in the data space, especially with what's happening with AI. The big data market's on track to hit 90 billion in 2025, and that's up nearly double in just 2 years. In the UK, the data center market is projected to more than double by 2030, so it's growing at just over 13% year over year. London alone, demand is so hot that capacity take up is forecast to rise 58% year on year. And what we want to really learn about through this session is what's changing in the space, where's the demand, and why veterans suit this industry. So it's going to be more insight led. It's not a sales pitch, super informal conversation. Let's have some fun and learn a bit about this interesting industry. So I'm going to hand over to Dan and Dave just to do a quick intro. I'll start with you, Dave, if that's all right.
Yeah, no worries. Afternoon, everyone. Dave Ashley. Joined the Marines in 2021, done 23 years in total. 6 of those spent with 4-2 Commando and 40 Commando, and a little bit of CTC before I then moved on and became a Special Forces communicator based down in Poole, and done about 17 years down there. Current role at the minute is a data center manager, or as we call it within Equinix, an IBX manager, in International Business Exchange Manager. And I've been here now for around about 18 months.
Thank you, Dave. Dan?
Thanks, Ben. Hi, guys. Dan Cole. Shorter tenure than Dave in the Royal Marines. I spent 6 years as a commando, primarily based out of 40 Commando in Taunton. Traveled around the world a bit, was stationed in the Indian Ocean on Diego Garcia. Transitioned into Civvy Street and have now popped up nearly 2 years now as the Director of Talent Acquisition for EMEA for a data center business called Digital Realty, a US headquartered organization. And essentially my role, if you've not come across talent acquisition, we have an internal recruitment team that supports all the hiring that our business does across all functions and across all levels. So delighted to be here speaking to you all today.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dan. So let me jump straight into the questions. I want it to be a conversation. So if the question hits Dave, Dan, and you want to jump in and add anything to it, let's do that as well. I'm going to start with you, Dave, first. I mean, just for everyone listening on the call, Dave's obviously new into the industry, or relatively new into the industry, and is in a very different role than Dan. Dave's more operational on site, running a data center, whereas Dan is all about talent strategy, bringing the right types of people and the right types of skills into the business. Dave, I want to start with you, and it's slightly off actually. We've got some pre-prepared questions, but I actually want to start a little bit before the question that I have. The question I have is, you've just moved from the Royal Marines and you've got into this, you're managing critical infrastructure. The question was what surprised you, but I actually want to take a step back because I know your story around going to an Equinix experience day and you were literally disqualifying yourself on the day, right? So can you
Yeah.
just give us a bit of a rundown of that experience?
Yeah. So I was sat at home on maternal leave, and I just jumped onto my modern laptop, and I had an email from CTP inviting me to an insight day at Equinix. At the time, I absolutely had no idea who Equinix were. Done a bit of research, realized that it was a data center company. So yeah, so I signed up to it. Thought it's got nothing better to do rather than sitting around the house. I'll take a day out. So yeah, I came down to Equinix in Slough, into one of the data centers down here, and basically sat there with about 14 other people, and they were just being spoke at by the talent acquisition, giving us all the details around who Equinix are, what they do, and what they're looking for. And basically, what they were saying is what they're looking for, and they're pushing operations hard. Obviously, operations being the biggest side of the business. So yeah, so there was pushing. We need electrical engineers, we need mechanical engineers, we need custom operation technicians. So those telemecs amongst you, need all those type of skill sets. And I'm sat there, I'm like, literally do not fit in here at all. And I got really down on myself. And then halfway through the day, they then invited a load of ex service leavers in, and one of those guys was a director, ex tanky. He told me all about his career and whatever. And then I was open and honest with him. I just said, look, I'm sat here and I don't fit in. I said, I feel like I've got nothing to offer this business. And then he sat there and he was like, well, can you lead people? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. Can you do that? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. He's like, so you definitely fit in. And it made me realize that actually all the skills that I've learned, or I had learned in the military, were actually really useful in this business and obviously and others. I left that day feeling a bit better about myself, but not hoping for much. And I then jumped on LinkedIn and I connected both with that director at the time, and then the two talent acquisition guys. And within 10 minutes of me connecting with them, they asked me for my CV. Sent them across my CV, and then within 2 weeks, I was sat in an interview with them. And I got into the interview, and again, I was expecting to be hammered on. Sorry, what I'm trying to say. Expected to get hammered on all things electrical and mechanical and engineering, and I was obviously petrified. As my first ever interview I'd ever had in my life. I'd never been through an interview. I joined the Marines when I was 16 years old. Never had an interview. And I got in there, and after 3 or 4 minutes of me introducing myself, Wayne, the director, stopped me for a second. He went, mate, just chill out. It's just 3 blokes having a chat with each other. I was like, okay, cool. So and that really set on my nerves then. And then so got asked a few questions, and then the other guy in there was another director, and he was on the engineering side, and actually he was really good. He turned around and said, wait, mate, I'm not going to ask you anything to do with engineering because I know you haven't got an engineering background. We're just going to talk to you about management. And I walked away from that interview feeling I'd done okay, but not convinced. And then again, within half an hour of leaving that interview, I had a phone call from the TA guy saying, mate, do you want you back in for a second interview? And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, I started an interview with then the VP of operations, and she's still here now, and HR. Walked away from that interview really down on myself, so I thought I've not done well here. I got offered the role, and that's where I am now.
Amazing. I think that's one of the toughest things, isn't it? Is like a lot of people, first and foremost, don't understand that their skills relate to a job description. Like, why would you?
Yeah.
It's really difficult to understand. And then you go away thinking you didn't do so well, and then you did well. So I wanted to like open with that because I think it's important for people to listen to. I'm gonna flip it back to you in a second, Dave. I want to know more about like what do you actually do in a data center? If I was thinking about me leaving 8-7 years ago, I didn't even really know what a data center was. Like, I'll be honest with everyone, I had no idea. So Dan, I'm going to flip to you a second. Dave's obviously mentioned quite a few roles there, and again, thinking of me 7 years ago, I had no idea what those types of roles were. You built global teams in infrastructure. You're like on the ground doing this at a really fast-paced, growing global company. Where do you think the opportunity is for the military community coming out now? Right now, over the next 12 months, but over the next 3, 4 years in this space. And those roles, Dan? Like, what do they even do? You know?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's fair to say that in this industry that Dave and I both work, which is growing at such a pace, the opportunities are always there. We are constantly hiring. If you look at any, either of our career sites, they all demonstrate that, and you'll get a flavour of the type of opportunities that we're actively looking for in the UK. Relevant to this particular call. To give you an example of what they typically look like, there is always going to be a heavy bent towards operations roles. And by operations roles, I'm talking about engineers, I'm talking about technicians, I'm talking about guys that maintain and operate and essentially keep our data centers running. Okay. And that could be people with some form of engineering background and qualification. But similarly, there are other roles that you don't necessarily need that same level of technical skill set to come in and start from the ground up. Outside of that, we hire in the security space, so physical security typically. As you can imagine, our sites are of critical importance to the national infrastructure. These are mission critical environments, and therefore the physical security of our sites is super important. So that's a function where we are continually growing and expanding. To pick up on some other areas, the health and safety business, certainly within our firm, is continually growing because it's a safety first environment, as you can imagine, with the equipment and the technologies that are utilized within our data centers. It's important that our protocols are followed and adhered to quite strictly. And then, of course, we have leadership roles, broader management roles. So the role that Dave holds at Equinix, for a good example, that is typically about the leadership skills that you possess rather than the technical background. I don't want to repeat Dave's story, but we're very similar insofar as we look for a lot of the skill sets that are born from that military training to come in and to lead, to input discipline, to install process, to run a mission critical environment, and that sort of no fail environment that you guys on the call are very used to, having served in the military, is of hyper importance within what we do. So hopefully, Ben, that's just an example of probably some of the more prominent roles that we are consistently hiring in the UK.
And are you seeing? I hit you with some data at the beginning around the growth in this sector. Are you seeing that within the operation of Digital Realty? Are you seeing the business expanding significantly?
Yes, quite simply, the investment that that our business is putting in, not just in the UK but globally. We're acquiring land and building on that land, building new data centers. We are acquiring businesses, both in existing countries where we already operate, but also in new countries. To give you an example, in the metro of Paris, we're expected to double our capacity within the next 2 to 3 years. And with this growth, it makes common sense to think that the demand for people is there. If we're building new data centers, if we're acquiring new data centers, we need the staff to run those and to operate and to maintain. And they are, I think it's fair to say, the most important roles that we hire within our firm, because we will sell customer contracts. If we don't have the people to staff the data centers, essentially we're in breach of these contracts, and there are significant fines to be had with not having a data center populated to the right level. So it's of critical importance that we find people quickly, but we find the right people as well. So we need to think more broadly about the skill sets and where we're going to hire these people from. And I think the military is proving to be an ever more popular source of talent for us, and it's something that we're keen to encourage even further.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Dan. I'm going to come back to you, Dan, and talk more high level around that. Dave, I want to flip back to you. So you've gone through this process of not thinking you've got any skills related to this specific industry. You probably say you winged it through every single one of those interviews. If I think back of me interview, I was winging it when they're going through.
Yeah.
But you did well, and they saw potential and they understood that you had skills, and you landed in the role. You were going into that, I assume, with very little understanding of what the day to day would be. What's been surprising to you since you've started?
Um, I think the biggest thing was the amount of responsibility that I hold. I mean, if you look at my role in the military as an SFC, compared to a generalist in the military, the responsibility an SFC held is huge, and I thought that was really really big. However, coming into this role now, it's grown exponentially. I'm responsible for an awful lot, which really really surprised me. And literally the buck stops with me, which obviously is a huge responsibility, especially when there's people's lives involved in terms of Legionella risk due to water towers, in terms of obviously the amount of power coming into the building. Obviously, it's megawatts. So yeah, so that was the biggest surprise to me, was the amount of responsibility that I'm holding.
And so you've come in, you're surprised with the responsibility and like the scope of what you're looking at. How's that like onboarding process been? Like, I asked you before we even went live, are you still drinking from a fire hose? Like, joking, but I
Yeah.
assume you are. How's Equinix supported you in that journey? Because that's obviously important. You don't want to just get in there and feel a ton of pressure if you've got that much responsibility.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I was supported, and still I'm supported really really well. So first thing they done is actually I came across a course, a CDCMP, Certified Data Centre Management Professional, run by CNET, and that basically just basically takes you through the whole operation of a data center. So I requested to do that course. It cost about $5-6 grand to do that course. So yeah, and in a heartbeat they said yes, do that. I was actually the first data center manager that had been recruited by Equinix here in the UK that had not already been part of the business. And obviously I didn't have, like I say, I didn't have an engineering background. So and loading me on a course which give me the fundamentals of how to run a data center, or how data centers run, but then also just having that support by the senior management, and also allowed that time to get myself embedded, learn the site, learn the people, learn the processes. So yes, yeah, that's been really, and still are, really really good.
So the business is supporting you. They're kind of like walking you through every step.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you're not going in like completely blind, is
No,
what I was trying
no,
to get. Yeah,
yeah.
it's amazing. Amazing. And Dan, you're talking about this demand, you're talking about the jobs, the roles, and what's coming. Can you give I want to get more into how the veterans stand out in your world. But firstly, I think being in like me being around the industry, speaking with you guys, like working with the data center companies, I understand what's causing this boom. Can you just explain to people who are on the call who maybe aren't as aware, like what is it that's going on in the market? Like, we always talk about AI, but what is it that's causing this growth in the space? Like, why is it happening?
I think you touch on a key reason there is that exponential growth of AI and our use globally of AI in all walks of life. We've all, I'm sure, on this call at some point used a chat GPT or something similar. But it really is phenomenal and quite scary what AI is capable of. And for AI to be utilized in the way that it is needed, data centers, not just from Digital Realty or from Equinix, but from all over the world, the strain that it puts on the capacity within data centers is just increasing to a level that's difficult to describe. So we as an industry need to keep up with the demand of capacity that is getting put upon us. which means growth, which means new sites, which means larger sites, more capacity, and that isn't going away anytime soon. I think we've all seen the impact, or are starting to see the impact that AI is having on a variety of industries, and in many cases replacing a lot of the work that humans are doing at the moment, and that is only going to increase. Like it or not, that is the reality. So that positions us really well as an industry, where we can genuinely say we are in a growth sector. I suspect there aren't many sectors that are seeing growth at the rate that we are at the moment. So it's a really good place to be, really exciting place to be, with longevity, I think, which is key.
I think that's an important thing for people to remember as well. You always hear the media talking about loss of jobs, loss of jobs, loss of jobs. AI is going to steal your job. But actually, there's other industries as well as the data center space that are being impacted right now in terms of like the demand. Like energy is a great example of that. I read it's like 14 times more power is required for an AI data rack versus a traditional data rack. I don't know how accurate that is. You guys are in the space, but like the significant power demands are causing, huge demand for people within the energy sector as an example. So I think that's something for people to consider when they're like searching for that next career, is like, where's this career going to be in the next 5 years? Is it on that kind of growth trajectory that I'm looking for in a career? So
Yeah,
it's
It's not
great.
just
Go on, Dave.
sorry. It's not just the power demands. It's also the cooling demands. Obviously,
Yep.
AI obviously is, and all these racks are going to create a lot of energy which need cooling, and so it's obviously coming up with innovative ways to get these racks cooled as well. So that's a big challenge also.
Yeah, and we've had experience in that space with people like Schneider Electric and Honeywell. So you've got
Hmm.
like the cooling, you've got new facilities, so you've got HVAC, you've got building maintenance system. There's just so much opportunity in this critical infrastructure space because of AI.
Yeah.
So yeah, great. It was great to call it out, Dave. I've got one other question then, Dan, because we speak about the roles, but you know how much I care about the skills, like identifying skills and aligning skills with the right types of careers. A high level, what you're looking for in an individual when you're assessing them from a skill perspective, um, and then how do you look at skills as an organization? And this is not plug-in redeployable by any means, but like what is it you're doing as you as an individual, but you've got a team who are doing this as well, right? When you see
Yeah.
a veteran CV.
Yeah. To answer your question, Ben, I guess it really depends on the specific role that we're hiring for. But if I put them into two broad camps, we'll say technical and non-technical roles. So the technical roles would include site engineers or shift engineers, for example. And again, depending on the specific role in the data center, it might be a mix of electrical engineering backgrounds. It could be electromechanical backgrounds that we're looking for. To give some tangible examples of skill sets that we have seen transfer from the military direct into our organization. Naval engineers, those that have worked on frigates. These are not dissimilar environments to what we see in a data center. So you're looking for in a technical role that is going to be hands-on technical and actually operating equipment. You're looking for an engineering a background, maybe qualified by experience, maybe with a specific qualification. Then we have the non-technical roles, be it management roles or non-management roles. There are a lot of qualities that we look for that the military instills in you from day one, whether that is discipline, whether that is adaptability, whether that is learning agility. A lot of these that you guys on this call all probably see as fundamental aren't always associated by civilians that have not gone through a military career. So we look for character and those cultural fit qualities. How do you fit into a team? How do you lead a team? As much as we do, the more technical skills occasionally for the role. So it's as important to fit and as it is to be qualified and capable for the role that you're being hired for.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dan. That's going to be super helpful for everyone. I'm just conscious of time. I'll get told off if we overrun, which has happened before. So we're going to jump into some questions. We already have some questions in here. If anybody's got any more questions and we don't get to them in this session, what we'll do is we'll compile all of the questions and who asked them, and we'll get back to you following the call with some insight. But I've got them in two different areas. I've got them in the chat, and I've got one question. Samuel has been the one in the Q&A. Thank you, Samuel. So I'm going to work through some of these questions here. Um, I'll actually answer this first one, Kevin. But I mean, Dan and Dave might have some insight from their respective companies. What is the likelihood of roles becoming available in the northeast of England, as predominantly employment has been Bristol and South? We're seeing this as well. There's a lot of hiring in the data center space in the south of England. There's some big projects going on in the northeast. So I know QTS have got a big project to build 4 data centers in Blythe with BlackRock. That's a 10 billion investment. Again, I think it's 2027 that those open. So there's time to that. Dan, Dave, do you know of any other opportunities aside from kind of this M4 corridor where people can look?
So that was the only one that you just mentioned, is the only one that I know of. And just for context, the reason why obviously the M4 corridor is let's say the hub is obviously just because of that's where the power cables and the data cables come into from the coasts. So that's one of the main reasons why most things are looking to stand here. But yeah, the one in the northeast is the only one that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Again, that's the only one I've heard of as well, but I haven't got a full picture. So from Shem, how do the data center expansion future-proof itself for power demands and cooling, and how to offset the cost factor and build it into the circular economy?
Wow.
Yeah, that was a mouthful, that one.
Um,
Shem, can you give us a little bit more context on that? And what I'll do is I'll scroll back down to the next question, and then we'll come back to that one, just so then we've got a better idea of what the question is. Luke Gilmore, is there a requirement for cross-functional engineering management within this space, or do it likely be somebody like Dave, who is an ops manager, and then pure engineers? Were you used to wearing many hats in the military? Is the data center space similar, or are people generally pigeonholed into roles?
yes, there is definitely opportunity for cross-functional. And no, you're definitely not. I can obviously only talk for Equinix, but you're definitely not pigeonholed into one. And that's another thing that I've really found surprising is you're encouraged to move sideways into other parts of the business. You're encouraged to basically just move around the business and stay within the business. So no, you're definitely not pigeonholed just to stay in your lane, let's say.
Same with you, Dan. Digital Realty?
Yeah, I would agree with what David said, and I think there does exist opportunities for people with cross-functional engineering management backgrounds, and that might be in a team lead capacity where actually you are combining your management skills with your technical background and understanding. We have such positions within Digital Realty. And I can think of individuals, to Dave's point around being encouraged to move both upwards and sideways within the firm. I can think of people that have held that sort of team lead, I think we call it manager engineering operations role, that exists in a data center, managing a team of engineers or technicians that have then moved into more of a technical training capacity. And this is someone who is training our existing and our new staff and upskilling these people around the various technical roles that exist in a data center. So yeah, we certainly don't look where possible to pigeonhole. Naturally, you will have square pegs, square holes quite often, and that is always going to be the case with a natural fit. But we also try to think a little more laterally and sort of broadly around what core skills does a person have that may not be the most obvious fit to our business, but if we can find something that suits, similar to Dave's story with how he got into Equinix, then we'll absolutely do that.
An example I can give with regards to people moving across the business is we currently have a data center manager who started off at Equinix as a cleaner. He then went to night school, got qualifications. He then landed himself a level 2 role, where he was obviously a little less qualified. He then eventually became a shift supervisor, and most recently just made data center manager.
Brilliant.
It's a great
Love that.
story.
Yeah,
I think it's like the Pret CEO who started as a barista or something like that, right? Like, yeah. I missed one earlier on, which was how long did the course take you, Dave? That
the
Equinix put you on?
the CDCMP it's a week-long course, Monday to Friday, and with an exam at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can, like, if you jump on the CNET website, you'll find them all on there. There's loads of courses on there to do with data centers.
Okay, cheers. Kevin Murphy, I've completed some cybersecurity quals and I'm completing my Crest CPSA in October. Is there any area where I could fit in? Apologies, maybe a silly question. There's never a silly question, Kevin. I'm sure one of them can answer that. Any cyber type roles?
Cybersecurity is definitely an area that that we have roles that the industry has roles in, because as you can imagine, again, to use a phrase that we've talked about a lot in here, these mission critical infrastructure environments that we're running, they are constantly or regularly under attack from entities that may want to tap into our infrastructure. So it's important that we have a smart cybersecurity team in place. We in the business, we constantly get phishing emails from external entities. A lot of the time they're being sent by our cybersecurity to see if our employees deal with them in the right way, that we've all been taught to deal with them, and the internal training that we have on that. So the brief answer is yes. Cybersecurity is a function that absolutely is welcomed in the data center industry.
Thank you. Good question. Kieran, do you see a demand for strategy managers teams for the supply of alternative power? So e.g. nuclear, fuel cells, hydrogen.
I know nuclear power has been looked into. I've even heard talks of mobile nuclear power plants where they just roll up next to the site and provide power. I don't know too much. That's pretty much my limit, but I know it's definitely been looked at.
Yeah, same as Dave. I've seen and heard ideas of mobile or smaller nuclear units being positioned 50 feet under a data center to power that data center. Because typically when you're looking to acquire land, the biggest challenge for where to build a data center is access to power, which is why nuclear power is such a big topic, and actually has been for quite some time. I think it's just there are many restrictions and challenges around developing it in a safe way for the industry. Whether those sort of technologies that the question talks about are being developed in-house by the data center firm, possibly, but I suspect there are a lot of outsourced providers that are also doing that themselves, that would probably have a higher demand for the types of roles that you've asked there, Keenan. I couldn't tell you who they are, but I'm sure a quick Google search would.
Well, Keenan called them out. Rolls-Royce for nuclear, fuel cells, Bloom. So he's called a few out. So I think,
Okay.
yeah. So the answer is the industry is exploring more alternative power routes, which will likely require different roles in the future.
Yeah.
Timothy, thank you both for your time. And then ask the question, are there any non-technical courses you can recommend to do in order to prepare for a role in the sector? And what percentage of data center jobs require a high level of security clearance?
I'll touch on courses. So like I said, I mentioned earlier, CNET. If you look on CNET, there's all sorts of certified data center courses. There's even a certified data center management master's degree, which is run by, I can't remember, university. And they're all non-technical courses as well. So yeah, so that's as far as I'll go with courses.
And I'll pick up the second part of that job. A very small percentage, if any, that I'm aware of, roles in our industry require a high level of security clearance. We do, and all organizations pretty much will do basic background screening before you're offered a role. but that is just basic referencing, credit checking, identification checks, and so on. But in terms of high level of security clearance, no, we're not the same as a military supplier like a BAE Systems, for example, where they will have certain roles that will need to be SC cleared. So no, I think that demand is very low, if at all.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just running through the webinar chat right now. I know there are 3 more Q&A questions coming in. Hopefully we'll get to them. If we don't get to them, we'll get back to you with the answers. We've got Frank Taylor. From your perspective, for someone with 10 plus years in telecoms moving into data centers, which entry roles are realistic first steps? Which starter courses actually help an interview? Do your companies or your partners offer any learn while you earn pathways for veterans? I struggled there.
I know. Sorry, Dan.
No, go, Dave. Go.
I know Schneider Electric run. I think they call it Schneider Electric School, and it's free online learning. So there's a few things you can do on there.
So they do. They've got the Schneider University.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
They also do. We did this with them specifically. Mature apprenticeships. So we identified skills, dropped cohorts of people into Schneider Electric, and they train them on the job whilst paying them on the job. So there is opportunity like that. Is there anything that Frank could look at that's maybe I'm just thinking about specifically Frank's telecoms experience moving into data centers?
When we say telecoms, are we talking? Was he a radio operator? Was he a technician? Was he telecommunications is broad brushed in it really.
Frank's gonna have to type quickly.
But I mean, I think whether that's a technician or a radio operator, I think it definitely does. I think it all depends on what he wants to do and what he wants to get out of it. And so it's a tough one to answer. If he wants to be technical, then go away and do those technical courses. Go and get mechanical courses, electrical courses. If he doesn't, then obviously we have those technician roles where it's a bit like it's all to do with networking. So cross connects and stuff like that. So it all depends on what he wants.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Sorry, Dan, did you have something to add?
Only briefly to say that when looking to get into entry-level roles, the more open-minded you are potentially to working shifts, the more opportunities you'll have available to you. So that won't fit with everybody's lifestyle and family situation. I get that, but if you are in a position where you're open to working in a shift pattern, then you'll definitely have more opportunities available in our industry.
Yeah, an interesting one from Robert Way. And I think this is going to be the last one, guys. And I apologize. What we'll do, I know Annabelle on our team is working hard in the background. She'll clear all of these questions and we'll get back to you with answers. So this is from Robert Way. Thanking you both again. For those of us that are still a Swiss Army knife, familiar with tech but not technical, how does the CV land when a job spec is quite defined?
Good question. I mean, Ben, it talks a lot to the mission that your business is on, redeployable. So maybe you can talk a bit to this as well. But I think organizations and the firm that I work for, Robert, are no different. We need educating. We need to move ourselves forward in how we assess individuals. CVs are only of use to a certain point. You get far more out of meeting the individual. You get far more out of translating what skills they've acquired in their previous career, in our case, the military career, and translating what they actually mean in Civvy Street. So, but that's a journey that organizations like us are on. I'll be totally honest. There are more and more businesses, and I'm sure Ben will attest to this, that are becoming much more open-minded and much better at that. I think there's still a long way to go on that journey. But I think as time goes by, you'll find that your CV that's familiar with tech but not necessarily technical, it will start to land better. The better educated we become in and partnering with firms like Redeployable in looking outside of the CV. I don't know if that really answers your question, but
It's tough. It's tough, isn't it? It's a tough one because I think CV, it's really difficult to express who you are through a CV and what you bring into the table. So I mean, the segue onto that is like Digital Realty are like super innovative in this space. We're about to go live and announce work with Digital Realty where they're committing to hiring a significant number of veterans without ever looking at a CV, but looking at that person's skills. And then we build mini simulations. We call them job drops. So you can try out what it's like to be a site engineer within Digital Realty, and we can help you understand whether you're a good fit or not, and then share with Digital Realty why we think you're a good fit and how they could possibly onboard you into their business. So there are organizations looking in this space, but I think you've always got to remember as a veteran when you're getting out, a lot of these organizations and a lot of recruitment teams have got no idea what you did in the military. Don't understand it. They don't.
Yeah.
Why would they understand what a special forces communicator is in pool?
Mm-hmm.
They just don't. So it's all. I personally think it's the tech will catch up eventually, and people like Digital Realty and Equinix will crack on and do these things successfully. But in the meantime, you need to be speaking to people like Dan and Dave. You need to be networking and what Dave did. Dave got that opportunity to interview because he spoke to a director and he was super open. So I think you've got to get past the online code application, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the more ex-servicemen and women we have joined the industry, the easier it'll become to pick those CVs. We can decipher them a lot easier than obviously civilians or who've been civilians for the whole life. But definitely networking. For me personally, I left the military 18 months ago. Networking was, and I would say, is the biggest and the best way, rather than just dropping CVs blind.
Yeah. Great. Right, we're coming to an end there. Dan, Dave, I really appreciate you both taking the time to come and educate people on this space. I think it's one of the most exciting places to be globally right now. For everyone on the call, we all appreciate you taking the time and asking questions and being inquisitive. If you want to reach out to Dan and Dave, like connect with them on LinkedIn, I think that's really important. Back to that getting in touch with folk. And if you do want to have a play around and see if you would be a good fit for some roles at Digital Realty, we're about to go live with some of their job drops, their simulations, and their pathway. So it's an opportunity to test whether you'd be a really good site engineer and the skill gaps that you have. So we can help with all of that, and Digital Realty will be on the other side of that, and the recruitment teams to see how you did. So that's it. Redeployable.io, Dan Cole at Digital Realty and Dave Ashley at Equinix. Get in touch with everybody, and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Cheers,
all.
Ben.
Thanks, guys.